John William Hummel was born on November 4 in 1975. He worked as a security guard at the local hospital. He was a veteran of the U.S. Marines. He lived in the city of Kennedale with his pregnant wife, 34-year-old Joy, and young 5-year-old daughter, Jody. His 57-year-old father-in-law Clyde Bedford also lived with the family. Clyde Bedford had debilitating rheumatoid arthritis, which forced him to use a wheelchair. He was a retired plumber who spent his days at the Kennedale Seniors Center, and loved spending time with his family. His granddaughter, Jody, was the apple of his eye. He often referred to her as the light of his life. Joy was a licensed massage therapist, who often would give her father therapeutic massages to ease the debilitating pain from his arthritis. Joy was excited about being pregnant, and anticipated the new addition to their family. Jody attended kindergarten, at Delaney Elementary School. On all accounts the Hummels seemed happy to the outside world. In early October of 2009, Hummel met a young lady at a convenience store where she worked as a cashier, named Christy Fries. He began stopping by often, chatting or flirting. At some point, the two exchanged phone numbers, and began a full-on affair. John told Christy he was married, but no longer was in love with his wife. She was also married, with a young child, but after meeting John, she quickly filed for divorce. He became obsessed with Christy. When Hummel found out his wife was pregnant, he briefly broke off the relationship with Fries, but it started back up on December 16, when Hummel found out Fries's divorce was finalized. He visited her at her apartment briefly. On December 18 in 2009, shortly after 12 a.m., a man was taking a stroll down Little School Road in Kennedale, Texas when he noticed a house on fire. He called 911. Police kicked down the front door in hopes of saving anyone trapped inside, but the fire was too fierce. They shouted into the home, but nobody responded. When the fire was finally put out, 3 bodies were discovered. On closer investigation, it was discovered that Joy had been stabbed 35 times, and both Jody and her grandfather Clyde died of blunt force trauma to the head. None of the bodies' cause of death was by fire or smoke inhalation. At 4:30 a.m., a man pulled into the church parking lot across the street from the Hummel home, and walked calmly up to the police officers. He asked the officers if anyone made it out alive. The officers told the man they had not determined that just yet. The officer asked the man if he knew anyone in the home. He responded, "I live here with my wife, daughter, and father-in-law." Hummel was taken to the police station for an interview. Detectives immediately noticed blood on his pants and socks. They also documented fresh scratches on his back. Police noted that Hummel did not shed the first tear after learning his entire family was dead. He was stone-faced and cold. Authorities gave Hummel a change of clothes, and sent his clothes off to the lab for further testing. At this point, even though they suspected Hummel was behind the murders, they had no solid evidence to arrest him until the lab results came back, so they released Hummel. Hummel immediately went to the hospital where he worked as a security guard, and picked up his paycheck, and vanished. A memorial service was held at First Baptist Church of Kennedale. Friends and family gathered to mourn the loss of their loved ones. When Hummel did not show up for his wife, daughter, and father-in-law's memorial services, friends and relatives became worried that he could also be in danger. They became worried and called police to report him missing. When lab results came back from Hummel's clothing, it showed that blood and DNA of all three victims were found. The fire was determined to be intentionally set. Rolls of toilet paper had been lit on fire, and placed throughout the home. A warrant was issued for Hummel, but he had since fled to Mexico. In 2011, Hummel entered the U.S. on foot between San Isidro, California, and Tijuana, Mexico. Border security noticed he was wanted in connection to murder, and detained him. Hummel gave a full confession later that same day. He told authorities that he stood thinking if he should kill his family or not. He said, "I remember standing there holding the kitchen knife, contemplating on whether or not to kill my wife for about 30 minutes. He went on to say, "I did a horrible, horrible thing. I know I'll spend the rest of my life in jail or be put to death. I accept it. I deserve it." Bedford's sister, Celinda Bifford, said that she did not understand why Hummel killed his family. She said, "Come on, your own baby. You gotta be some kind of monster." She went on to say, "I don't have no closure. And him being put to death is not going to be closure either, because then we'll never know why." John William Hummel was charged with 3 counts of capital murder. At trial, Hummel's attorney tried to argue that his client suffered from PTSD, a stress disorder due to his military service. That his time in the military caused him to snap. However, evidence came out that Hummel had made a prior attempt to murder his family with rat poison. However, that attempt failed when the family refused to eat the food due to the poison turning the food a greenish color. This guy senselessly took the life of a beautiful mother, a beautiful child, and a grandfather who just did everything for them. For him to want to be single, and simply kill like this doesn't make sense, said prosecutor Miles Brissett. In 2011, at age 44, Hummel was convicted of all 3 murders and sentenced to death. His date of execution was March 18 in 2020, but that date was postponed due to the global outbreak of coronavirus. On June 30 in 2021, John William Hummel said his last words. He expressed remorse for the killings. He was finally executed by a lethal injection of pentobarbital. He was pronounced dead at 6:49 p.m. local time. Joel Smith, age 33, and his wife Heather, age 35, had been married for 12 years. The Smiths moved to Maine from Phoenix, Arizona just a few years ago, in hopes of improving their financial situation. Smith's father previously made the move, and Joel followed with his family. The family lived in the Riverview Apartments in Saco, Maine. Joel worked as the super in the apartment building, as well as the other apartments owned by Phoenix Management. He also worked at Target to try to make ends meet. Heather worked as a medical assistant at Portland Gastroenterology. The couple had 2 biological children together, Noah age 7, and Lily, age 4. Heather had a son, Jason Montez, 12 years old, from a previous relationship, who also lived with the family. Noah attended Governor John Fairfield School. Jason attended Saco Middle School. On July 15, Joel called his father, Stephen, and asked him to come pick up the children. He told his father he'd let him know when to bring them back. He told his father that his wife, Heather, was going through severe withdrawals. She entered a detox center, while Joel received counseling. A week later, the children returned home. Joel told his father he was no longer drinking. In the previous year, Joel had numerous appointments for stress and anxiety. He was doing much better on the medication sertraline. On his February 28 appointment, the notes described Joel as having severe panic symptoms, obsessing, worrying, and difficulty sleeping. He had depression and panic disorder. He was supposed to return the following month, but never returned due to losing his medical insurance. He could no longer afford his medication. On July 25, after just leaving the detox center, Heather passed a drug test, and was in group therapy, but left halfway through the session without explaining why she left. On July 26, the family attended a barbecue with neighbors. Joel expressed he was angry with his wife for staying out until 10:30 p.m. drinking with neighbors. The couple argued over her drinking because she had just been released from treatment. Later that night, Joel grabbed his shotgun, and entered the two boys' room. He shot and killed Jason and Noah, then returned to the bedroom where he shot his wife and daughter. The next morning, he left the apartment, then returned to the home, entered the bedroom where his wife and daughter lay dead, and shot himself. All five died of a single shot to the head. The following day, Chris Harriman expressed concerns about the family's well-being to an apartment complex worker. The worker attempted to knock, but nobody answered. He opened the door with a key, and discovered a body. He quickly left and called police. Police were on the scene within several minutes. It was determined that Smith used both bird-shot and slugs in the pump-action shotgun, and each family member died instantly, and authorities believe while they slept. Detectives worked inside the apartment until after midnight on Sunday. Investigators interviewed family members and friends for several days to try to understand what happened, and why Smith would take the lives of his family as well as his own. Stephen Smith, Joel's father, said there was much more to the story, that his son and daughter-in-law suffered from addiction. He said his son suffered from alcoholism, and his daughter-in-law suffered from opiate addiction. 5 people are dead. 5 of the closest people in my world are dead. And it had to do with addiction on both parts, he said. He went on to say that when he returned the children home the week prior that something was not right. You'd talk to him, and he would be looking at the walls and stuff, and then come back and sometimes engage you, and sometimes not. And it hit me that his alcoholism had been so bad that when he quit drinking that he went into alcohol withdrawals, he said. Smith says he regrets not forcing his son to detox in a hospital now. I know something had to have snapped because Joel never would have done that in his right mind, said Joel Smith's mother, Jeris Carruthers Thorpe, of Scottsdale, Arizona. On July 26 David Tourigny said that he heard 5 loud pops coming from the apartment. Other neighbors also reported hearing either firecracker sounds or loud pops on the night of the murders. Heather Lemmers told reporters that Joel Smith saved her son's life back in 2013. Her son was drowning in the Saco River and Smith came to the rescue. Another neighbor, Heather Nason, babysat for the Smith children over the weekend, said, I loved those children like they were my own. It's extremely shocking. I never heard they were having problems. Police said that no suicide note was found, but a family friend said that on the night of the deaths, Heather told her about Joel threatening suicide recently. Stella Contreras, another neighbor said that Joel was menacing, if eyes could kill, you'd be dead. Suicidal statements should always be taken seriously, said Julia Colpitts, executive director of the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence. When domestic abuse and suicidal ideation coexist with mental health issues, you have a toxic, potentially lethal mix that can result in homicide, as well as suicide. In these high-risk cases, since mother and children are experienced as a psychological extension of himself, when he ends his life, his twisted assumption is that they should die as well, and not live on without him, she said. Maine Attorney General Janet Mills issued a statement about domestic violence, calling the slayings absolutely devastating. This horrific incident must serve as a reminder to all of us, that threats of violence and threats of suicide must be taken seriously, she said in her statement. Telling your boyfriend or girlfriend I can't live without you can quickly cross from the innocuous to the devastating. In the context of an abusive relationship, these utterances are veiled threats of violence, with a strong undercurrent of manipulation and control. Recognizing the signs of abuse, and acting upon them, is key to preventing future tragedies like this. A vigil was held a few days after the murders. Family and friends lit candles in remembrance of the lives lost. Memorial services were held for the family at Shadow Mountain Mortuary on Greenway Road in Phoenix, Arizona on August 4 in 2014. The family was buried at Phoenix Memorial Park Cemetery. John William Hummel was a selfish psychopath, who thought his pregnant wife and daughter were disposable. His father-in-law became an extension of his depravity. In his disturbing mind, he felt that he could get away with murder, and start a whole new life with his new love interest. Luckily, authorities were suspicious right away, and he was arrested and paid the ultimate price, death. Joel Smith and his wife had addiction issues. Unfortunately, their decisions led to the demise of their entire family, including innocent small children. Addiction is a terrible thing. However, taking someone else's life should never be an option. When you cross that line, you are no longer sick, you become evil. That concludes this episode. Keep your eye out for the next volume, coming soon. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.